Looking for a heartwarming children's book with a powerful message?
Being Me is the Best Thing to Be by Judy Erb tells the story of Honey, a curious little turtle who learns that being herself is the very best thing to be. It's a wonderful read for children, parents, and grandparents celebrating self confidence and self acceptance.
You can purchase this book on BookBaby, Amazon, or Barnes& and Noble.
If you want an autographed copy, you can email Judy directly at jerbauthor@gmail.com with your mailing address and who you'd like it personalized to.
All of these links are in the show notes, but make sure you get your copy today. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Wade.
And I'm Kat,
And that makes this Info on the Go.
feeding your curiosity wherever you go.
The Flower Wars. War with rules, blood, and purpose. Imagine two armies standing across from each other on a wide plain in central Mexico. War drums echoes, feathers ripple in the wind, obsidian blades, they catch the sunlight. Now here's the strange part. They're not here to take land. They're not here to wipe out each other. They're not even here to win in the way we usually think about war.
Their goal is to capture as many enemy warriors alive as possible, not prisoners for ransom, not slaves for labor, but living offerings. Because according to this civilization, the gods are hungry.
This is a story about a world where war wasn't just politics, it was cosmic survival, where people believed that without regular human blood, the sun would stop moving, crops would fail, and the universe itself would collapse into darkness. These battles, they had a name.
In the native language of this civilization, the war translates to the Flower War. And no, this isn't about peace or beauty. The flower symbolized honor, sacrifice, the blood spilled for the gods. These were ritualized wars fought by the Aztecs, also known as the Mexica, and their neighbors during the 1400s. Wars with rules, wars with agreed upon battlefields, wars where killing your enemy outright was often considered a mistake.
Because a dead enemy, it, they were useless for them. A living one was priceless. And here's the twist because history always has one, right? The very system designed to keep the Aztec world alive, well, the wars meant to feed the gods, train warriors, and maintain power would eventually help bring the entire empire down. And I think in this episode, Kat, let's just unpack the whole thing.
Yeah, what the Flower Wars actually were, why the Aztecs believed they were necessary, how these battles were fought, weapon by weapon, rule by rule, and what happened to the captives once the fighting stopped, and how this ritualized cycle of war created enemies who were just waiting for the right moment to strike back.
This isn't a story of pointless violence. It's a story of belief, duty, power, and the terrifying consequences of a world where war itself was sacred. I think let's get into the origins of the Flower Wars. You want to take that on?
Sure.
Okay.
Now, the Flower Wars didn't appear overnight. They evolved out of a specific moment in the Aztec history when religion, politics, and survival became tightly intertwined. Most historians trace the formalization of the Flower Wars to the mid 1400s during the reign of Moctezuma I, the fifth ruler of the Tenochtitlan. His rule marked a turning point for the growing Aztec Empire. Expansion was accelerating, power was consolidating, and a religious identity became more centralized than ever before.
At Moctezuma's side stood one of the most influential figures in Aztec history, Tykailan, a high-ranking advisor, a general, and a religious reformer. He wasn't just shaping policy, he was reshaping Aztec identity itself. He promoted the evolution of xōchiyāōyōtl. This is the sun and war god to the center of Aztec spiritual life and emphasized the idea that the Mexica people had a sacred duty to sustain the cosmos through sacrifice.
Then nature intervened. By 1450 and 1454, central Mexico was struck by a devastating famine. Crops failed, hunger spread, death followed, and in a society where natural disasters were interpreted through a spiritual lens, this crisis was not seen as a random misfortune. It was understood as a warning, a sign that the gods required greater nourishment.
Sacrifice increased, and with that increase came a practical problem. A steady supply of captives, well, it was needed to supply the sacrifice, right? Conquering and destroying neighboring states would have reduced the number of potential prisoners, but maintaining controlled enemies nearby could ensure an ongoing source of ritual offerings. Out of this logic, many historians believe the Flower Wars became formalized as a predictable system of ritual combat.
Some historical accounts suggest these conflicts were not merely repeated battles, but deliberate agreements between rival states, especially between the Aztecs, the Tlaxcala, to fight at designated times and places. These wars allowed both sides to preserve honor, maintain military readiness, and fulfill religious obligations without risking total destruction. In other words, the Flower Wars were not accidental traditions, they were designed. Now, what began as religious necessity, shaped by political strategy and reinforced by environmental crisis, became a permanent institution, a cycle of ritualized warfare that would last for generations. And once that cycle began, it was almost impossible to stop.
So, to understand the Flower Wars, we kind of have to step back completely out of the modern world and into a universe that the Aztecs believed was fragile. In Aztec belief, the world didn't just exist because it was stable, it existed because the gods had already died for it. And according to their creation stories, the gods sacrificed themselves to bring the sun into motion and the shape of the world as humans knew it. This act wasn't symbolic, it was literal. The universe was born through divine bloodshed. First of all, I never really stopped to think about that.
In a limited mindset, it's not altogether wrong with the Big Bang Theory. That created a problem because sacrifice creates debt. If the gods gave their lives so the sun could rise, then humanity owed something in return, a cosmic bill that had to be paid again and again. And that payment was blood. To the Aztecs, sacrifice wasn't cruelty. It wasn't even punishment. It was repayment. And they believed without regular offerings, the sun would slow and then stop, rain would fail, crops would die, and darkness would swallow the world.
So the apocalypse, it wasn't some distant prophecy. It was always one missed sacrifice away. At the center of this belief stood one God above all others, Huitzilopochtli. He was the god of the sun, the god of war. Every morning, Huitzilopochtli fought a cosmic battle to push the sun across the sky, and every night he was weakened. Without nourishment, he would eventually lose. And nourishment, well, that came from human blood.
And not metaphorically, literally. This belief shaped everything about Aztec society, especially how they fought wars, because if blood was fuel, then sacrifice wasn't about death. It was about keeping the universe running. War wasn't chaos, war wasn't mindless destruction, it was maintenance. A controlled, ritualized system designed to keep the sun moving, the rains falling, and the reality itself intact. From this perspective, capturing a living enemy wasn't an act of mercy, it was an act of responsibility.
Could you
No,
imagine that? You're going to be caught by one of these in these flower wars. You already know that if you're alive, you're going to be sacrificed to the gods.
right.
That's pretty tough.
That's stressful.
You're not out to kill your enemy on the battlefield. You're out to capture your enemy on the battlefield.
Right.
I think the flower wars, they stop looking like madness and they start looking like logic to the Aztecs, a brutal logic at that, but a logic that made perfect sense in the world where they lived because blood, it fed the gods and the gods fed their way of life. So in their minds, what am I trying to say here?
Blood made the world go round.
There you go. Kind of like the wheels on the bus.
Indeed.
Okay.
Why were they called flower wars? The name is the first thing that throws people off. I mean, it sounds poetic, right? Gentle, even, like something ceremonial, almost peaceful. But that's the trick. In that native language, the wars were literally translated as flower war. And while we tend to associate flowers with beauty or peace, that's not what the world meant to the Aztecs. Here, flower meant offering.
It meant honor. It meant ritual. It did not mean mercy. And it definitely did not mean peace. On Aztec battlefields, flowers didn't grow by accident. They bloomed because blood was spilled. Blood soaked into the earth. Blood fed the gods, and from that sacrifice, the universe continued. So captured warriors were seen as the most valuable flowers of all. They were the living offerings, proof of courage, strength, and divine favor. A battlefield that produced captives wasn't just successful, it was fertile.
Now, this wasn't poetry softening reality, it was poetry explaining reality. And this is a moment where it's worth stopping and asking a hard question. How often do we do the same thing?
I think before we really get into that question, you want to take a small break?
Sure,
Okay, Coke.
Pepsi.
Definitely not flowers.
No.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, listeners, ready to transform your sleep? Cozy Earth is all about lasting luxury and comfort. Their bamboo sheets have been called the world's softest sheets, cooling, moisture wicking, and unbelievably soft. And I can tell you they get better with every wash. And they have a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty.
But it doesn't stop there. They have baths, sleepwear, loungewears, and even skincare. Free shipping on orders of $50 or more.
Make sure you go to CozyEarth.com, use our code INFOGO at checkout to save 21% off. You can find all of this in the show notes.
So now that we're back, we say collateral damage instead of civilian deaths. We say neutralize instead of kill. We say surgical strike instead of destruction. Words have always been a way to make violence easier to carry. For the Aztecs, calling these battles flower wars wasn't denial. It was honestly within their worldview. The flower wasn't beauty, the flower was blood.
Wow. To your point, we put labels on destruction to make them sound less tragic.
More palatable.
Okay. I can agree with that. It has real purpose. The flower wars weren't fought for a single reason. They were fought because it worked. In fact, they worked so well that they became a permanent fixture of Aztec life, serving religion, the military, and politics all at once. First, religious sacrifice. At the most basic level, the flower wars existed to feed the gods. Living captives, they were essential for what they needed. A warrior killed on the battlefield, well, that was just a lost opportunity, a wasted offering, if you will. What the gods demanded wasn't death in combat, but life taken in ritual.
And not all captives were equal. The higher the status of the prisoner, the greater the honor to the gods. Capturing a skilled enemy warrior wasn't just impressive, it was sacred. It meant you had proven yourself worthy to deliver something valuable to the divine. And from this perspective, restraint on the battlefield wasn't mercy, it was strategy.
Then there was training the warriors. The flower wars also functioned as controlled combat zones, real battles with, well, very real consequences, but within known limits. This is how Aztec warriors were made. Young fighters learned discipline under pressure, how to maneuver and organize formations, and how to subdue an enemy without killing them. To go to battle and die on the battlefield is probably one thing. To go on the battlefield and to think you might be captured to be offered to the gods is a totally different thing.
Interesting, for sure.
Very. And it's probably one we still talk about it today.
Right. Now, Courage wasn't measured by how many enemies you killed. It was measured by how many you brought back alive. Your rank, your wealth, your social standing, all of it depended on captures. A successful warrior could rise in status, gain privileges, and earn respect across the empire, all through performance in these rituals.
In the Aztec world, warfare wasn't just about survival or expansion, it was a path to identity, honor, and social mobility. And nowhere was there more visible than the empire's elite warrior societies. So just think about this for a moment. You gain stature by bringing back warriors to be sacrificed to the gods, not by the number of warriors you killed in battle.
Right.
I don't know which one is harder here. Honestly and truly, I can't wrap my mind around this.
Definitely an interesting concept to run a society that way.
Yeah.
So the two of the most famous were the Eagle Warriors and the Jaguar Warriors. These weren't just soldiers. They were the military nobility of Aztec society, living symbols of courage, discipline, and religious duty. Now, becoming one wasn't easy.
Aztec boys were trained for warfare from a very young age. They were disciplined, endurance, and loyalty to the gods. It was drilled into them from day one. But training alone didn't earn status. Advancement came only through performance in real combat, especially during the Flower Wars. And the measure of success was simple. How many enemies could you bring back alive? Not how many could you kill, not if you survived on the battlefield. Didn't matter. How many people can you bring back to be sacrificed?
Capturing one enemy brought recognition, capturing several could elevate a warrior into the ranks of the elite. The Jaguar warriors, dressed in spotted jaguar pelts and helmets shaped like snarling cats, represented strength, stealth, and power.
Snarling cats?
Snarling cats.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm not touching those. I'm sorry. I'm just going to go the other way.
Right. You know, the jaguar was a creature of the night and it was associated with the earth and the underworld. Now, the eagle warriors, on the other hand, wearing feathered helmets shaped like the eagle heads, symbolized the sun, the sky, and the warrior god xōchiyāōyōtl. Eagles were seen as fearless hunters that soared toward the heavens, the perfect metaphor for warriors who captured enemies for sacrifice to the sun.
These weren't costumes for ceremony alone. They were worn into battle, transforming warriors into living embodiments of, well, the sacred animals and cosmic forces. And this is where the Flower Wars fit perfectly into Aztec society. Because the Flower Wars, they weren't just feeding the gods, they were creating heroes. Each captive taken, well, it meant higher rank, greater prestige, privileges into society, recognition in religious ceremonies, proof of divine favor.
Every time I see the word prestige, I think prestige. Like
Prestige.
prestige. I don't know. It's just an air of cockiness about it, I
Yeah,
guess. Every just
I can actually see that now. All right, let me try that again. Ready? Greater prestige.
yes.
Okay.
A warrior who captured multiple enemies could rise from commoner status into respected warrior status. Warfare offered one of the few ways to move upward in Aztec society. But this wasn't just ambition, it was a belief. Aztec warriors didn't see themselves as instruments of destruction, they saw themselves as participants in a sacred cycle, helping sustain the universe through courage and sacrifice.
Hmm. To capture an enemy in battle wasn't simply a military victory, it was a religious achievement. In the Flower Wars, the battlefield wasn't just a place of combat. No, it was it was a ground where young fighters became eagle warriors, jaguar warriors, and the Aztec understanding of the world, defenders of the sun itself. So, this is a place that all people wanted to participate in, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And then there was the political reality. The Flower Wars kept rival city states exactly where the Aztecs wanted them. constantly losing young men, always under threat, and never strong enough to challenge imperial power, all without the cost of full conquest. But not by wiping these rivals out, the Aztecs preserved a steady supply of enemies and captives. It was dominance without annihilation, control without absorption, a system that balanced fear, dependency, and ritual necessity.
So, the big picture here, if you put all this together, the logic becomes very clear. These wars fed the gods, they trained the enemy, they maintained political control. At the same time, efficient, ritualized, and, as history would eventually prove, really short sighted. So the Flower Wars weren't chaotic border skirmishes, they were organized conflicts between some of the most powerful city states in central Mexico. On one side stood the Aztec Triple Alliance. At its center was Tenochtitlan, the island city that would grow into the heart of an empire. Alongside were Texcoco, known for its scholars, laws, and engineers, and Tlacopan, a crucial military and political partner.
Together, these three cities dominated much of central Mexico. Their armies were disciplined, experienced, and fueled by religion as much as ambition. But the Flower Wars weren't fought against distant enemies, they fought against neighbors. The most frequent opponents were nearby city states that refused to fully be absorbed into the Aztec system, places like Huetzozinco and Chola. And then there was the Tlaxcala, and they were different. It was never conquered, not for a lack of trying, but because the Aztecs made a choice. They were surrounded by Aztec controlled territory, which cuts them off from easy trade and locked into a cycle of ritualized warfare that lasted generations. Battle after battle, capture after capture, and loss after loss.
So for the Aztecs, Toxochola was a convenient and reliable source of captives, a permanent battleground that kept the gods fed and the army shaped. But for Toxchola, it was a slow grind of humiliation and grief. Every warrior taken, every son who didn't return, every ceremonial defeat, it was remembered. And while the Aztecs saw tradition, order, and sacred duty, Toxochola saw something else, a reckoning.
Because Taxtella remembered every captive taken and every humiliation, and when a strange group of foreigners arrived on the coast in 1519 carrying steel horses and hatred for the Aztecs, they were ready.
Despite the blood and brutality, flower wars were not chaotic free for alls. They were scheduled. These battles were fought on prearranged times in designated locations, almost like grim appointments that were written into the calendar for the empire. Both sides showed up knowing exactly what was expected.
This wasn't an invasion, it was participation. And that structure carried on to the battlefield itself. The weapons tell a story. And one of the most iconic weapons was the Mahakwata. It's a wooden club lined with razor sharp obsidian blades, and it looked terrifying, and it was. But it wasn't designed to instantly kill either. A skilled warrior could shatter bones, disable limbs, or knock an enemy unconscious without ending their life.
First of all, if you came at me with a wooden club with obsidian blades in
Oh,
it,
I'm running for sure in the
huh?
opposite direction.
I'm gonna be like, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. You can sacrifice me, just don't hit me with that thing.
Right.
But alongside it were blunt weapons also, grappling techniques and disabling strikes. The goal wasn't slaughter, the goal was control. There were rules, some spoken, but many of them were unspoken. Killing an enemy outright wasn't celebrated. It was often seen as failure. Victory didn't belong to the warrior who left bodies behind. Victory, well, it belonged to the ones who brought captives home.
A warrior's reputation, rank, and future were measured by how many enemies he brought back alive. No ch- My brain almost said no chase.
No chase? You know what?
Oh
Speaking of no
man.
chase, I really want some nachos.
Oh man. I made some guacamole and we had salsa with some of those lime chips last night.
Mm.
It was good.
And here's where the flower wars really collide head on with our modern ideas of combat. Today, when we talk about total war, about overwhelming forces or annihilation and kill counts, success is, well, it's really measured by destruction. But in the era of the flower wars, success was measured by restraint.
By skill, by control, and by the ability to dominate an enemy without killing them. It's a jarring contrast. Because in this world, the most dangerous warrior wasn't the one who killed the fastest, it was the one who could take you alive.
Before we get into the fate of the captives, I say Coke.
Pepsi.
We'll be right back.
Now that we're back,
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Ready to turn an ordinary day into an unforgettable adventure? Check out QR Hunter. It lets you create custom treasure hunts with reusable QR code tiles. You can personalize clues, puzzles, photo challenges. You can do it all in just a few minutes. It's perfect for birthday parties, family game nights, classrooms, parks, team building events, or if you just want to have family fun. The free QR Hunter app, it works with any smart device. The adventure, it never really ends. You can search for QR Hunter on Amazon, or you can simply click the link in the show notes. But let the adventure start today.
once a warrior was captured, the battle was over, but the story wasn't. Contrary to what many people imagine, captives weren't immediately killed. They were taken back to Aztec cities and folded into a ritual process that had meaning, structure, and purpose.
Prisoners, they were fed, they were housed. In some cases, they were even honored for their bravery. These weren't seen as broken enemies, they were seen as chosen participants in something far larger than themselves. Captives were often given time to prepare spiritually, to understand what awaited them, to make peace with it. In a world where sacrifice sustained the universe, fear wasn't the only emotion at play. There was also resignation, belief, and in some cases, pride.
Then came the ceremony. Sacrifices were public events performed atop towering temple pyramids that dominated the city's skyline. Crowds gathered below as priests carried out rituals meant to nourish the gods and keep the sun in motion. And at the climax, the captive's heart was removed and offered, still beating, as the ultimate gift. It's impossible to hear that and not recoil.
We shouldn't pretend otherwise. But here's the reframing that really matters. These captives weren't viewed as disposable. They weren't worthless. They were essential. Because in Aztec belief, dying in sacrifice wasn't the worst fate. It was actually a meaningful one. A death that guaranteed purpose, honor, and a place in the cosmic order. This doesn't make the act gentle.
It doesn't make it comfortable, but it does make it understandable within their universe. Cruel by modern standards, sure, but logical within theirs. And that tension between horror and belief is exactly where the story of the Flower Wars lives.
If there was one place where the Aztec understanding of the universe came together, religion, war, sacrifice, and power, it was the Templo Mayor. At the center of Tenochtitlan, rising above canals, marketplaces, and palaces, stood this massive, steep pyramid. It wasn't just a temple, it was the symbolic center of the Aztec universe, the point where heaven, earth, and the underworld, it was believed that they all met here.
And at the top weren't one, but two temples. One side was dedicated to the god of sun and war, the divine force that demanded blood to keep the sun moving across the sky. And the other honored the god of rain, fertility, and agriculture, the giver of life through water and crops.
Together, they represented the balance the Aztecs believed sustained reality: war and nourishment, blood and rain, death and survival.
Every major religious ceremony in the empire flowed through this place. Processions moved through the city streets, drums echoed across the lake, incense thickened the air, thousands gathered below, looking upward as priests and captives climbed the steep steps toward the summit.
And this is where many flower war captives ended their journey, was at the top of the temple in full view of the city. Sacrifices were performed as public acts. They were not hidden rituals. The goal was not secrecy. It was affirmation, a reminder that the gods were being fed, the cosmic order was being maintained, and the empire was fulfilling its duty. So when the priest raised a still beating heart toward the sun, it wasn't meant as a spectacle alone. It was a message. The sun, well, it's going to rise tomorrow. The rains, they're going to come. And the world, it's going to continue.
Now, to modernize, the Templo Mayor can feel like a monument to brutality. To the Aztecs, it was something else entirely. It was a
If you're
machine.
understanding why Kat is kind of laughing in between these, you would have to be on this side of the mic. I know you hate it when I do that, but I thought it was funny.
Raised. I'm just going to look at you and do that now, just so you know.
You know what? Pronunciation, kids, is key.
Oh, man.
Pronunciate correctly. Don't be like William. There was one episode where I was like, either you can't say words correctly or I can't say words correctly, and you say, or pronunciate sentences, whole sentences or something other.
Oh, man, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. But I
Sometimes
know
I just be off the cuff, my guy.
same.
Sometimes it lands perfect, and other times I'm like, "Oh, maybe you shouldn't say that."
Well, I mean, there's a lot that we leave on the editing room floor. But anyway, let's raised on.
It was a machine for keeping the universe alive, and every captive taken in a flower war, every carefully planned battle, every restraint shown on the battlefield ultimately led here to the stone steps of the temple where belief became blood and blood became cosmic survival.
Really for generations. The Flower Wars did exactly what they were designed to do. They fed the gods, they trained elite warriors, they kept rival city states weak and contained. But there was a cost the Aztecs never fully accounted for: resentment. Whole generations grew up in places knowing only one relationship with the Aztec Empire: loss, sons taken, brothers captured, fathers sacrificed, a constant low level fear that any battle could end on a pyramid far from home.
And there was no path to peace. The flower wars were never meant to end. They were ritualized, permanent, and unavoidable. Submission didn't stop them, resistance didn't stop them. Survival itself depended on participation. And that kind of pressure doesn't fade, it waits. Then, in 1519, everything changed.
Some strange ships appeared on the coast. Men, they arrived wearing metal, carrying thunderous weapons, riding animals no one in central Mexico had ever seen. Hernan Cortez?
Hernan, yeah, if you can roll your R.
Hernan Cortez. Anyway, he arrived, and to the Aztecs, he was a problem. He was an opportunity. Former ritual enemies, people who had been fighting each other under the rules of sacred war, suddenly became military allies. Warriors didn't hesitate. They guided the Spanish. They fought alongside them. They supplied them because they really wanted to conquer the Aztecs.
But not because they really loved newcomers, but because they hated them more. And there's really the brutal irony. The Flower Wars had carefully preserved enemy states instead of conquering them outright. They keep those enemies alive, organized, and battle hardened. So when the moment came, they were still there. The system that sustained the Aztec world also planted the seeds of its collapse. A reminder that even the most carefully balanced systems, especially those built on violence, can carry the blueprint for their own destruction.
Here's what we still don't know. Even after centuries of study, the Flower Wars, well, they remain one of the biggest mysteries of the ancient Americas. Historians agree on many of the basics. These were ritualized conflicts Capturing prisoners, it really mattered more than killing. Human sacrifice was central to Aztec religion, but beyond those broad facts, scholars still debate some of the surprisingly important questions.
For example, were the Flower Wars truly planned by mutual agreement? Some early Spanish accounts suggest the Aztecs and their rivals arranged these battles in advance, almost like the scheduled contests fought on designated fields.
Other historians, they're really not sure because they argue that while the battles certainly followed traditions and recognizable patterns, they may not have been a formally organized as later writers claimed. Instead, they could have been reoccurring conflicts that gradually became ritualized over time.
Sounds a whole lot like taxes to me.
Yeah, taxes. Yeah, I'm with you. Blood taxes,
Indeed.
government blood taxes. It's one of those reminders that history is rarely as neat as we would really like it to be.
Another mystery involves the number of sacrifices. Popular culture often repeats enormous figures, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of victims. Some early Spanish chroniclers recorded astonishing numbers, particularly during the dedication of the Temple Mayor.
Many archaeologists, however, they tend to view many of these figures with, well, skepticism. They think that these numbers were exaggerated to make the Aztecs appear especially savage. Were they inflated to justify the Spanish conquest? Or were they closer to reality than many modern historians are willing to accept? The honest answer is we really just don't know.
The archaeological evidence continues to grow, but it doesn't answer every question. Then there's the question of how ordinary people felt. Did every Aztec genuinely believe the gods required human blood, or did some quietly question the practice?
History almost always preserves the voices of rulers, priests, and conquerors. It rarely preserves the private thoughts of farmers, merchants, parents, or children. So we know what the leaders believed.
We don't always know what the average person believed. And finally, archaeology continues to surprise us. Excavations beneath modern Mexico City, the site of ancient Tenochtitlan, continue to uncover temples, offerings, weapons, skull racks known as Sampantli, and ceremonial objects that deepen our understanding of Aztec life.
Each discovery answers one question, but it raises several more. That's one of the wonderful things about history. It's never really finished. Every excavation, every translation, every newly discovered artifact has a potential to rewrite part of the story. So the Flower Wars may have ended more than 500 years ago, but historians, they're still fighting to understand exactly what the Flower Wars really were.
By now, it should be clear that the Flower Wars were not pointless violence. They weren't random cruelty, they weren't chaos for chaos's sake.
They were religious, meant to nourish the gods. They were political, designed to maintain dominance without destruction.
So maintain dominance without destruction, but not chaos for chaos's sake. They were military, a system for training warriors and proving strength, and they were cosmic, woven into how the Aztecs understood the universe itself. Within that worldview, the Flower Wars made sense. They were ordered, they were ritualized, and they were necessary.
And that's what makes them so unsettling because it forces us to ask an uncomfortable question. What happens when a civilization's survival depends on endless war?
What happens when conflict isn't a failure of the system, but the system itself?
And before we dismiss this as ancient history, there's another question.
What modern systems rely on conflict in ways we don't even question anymore?
Economics, politics, ideological,
The Flower Wars remind us that war doesn't always look like chaos. Sometimes it looks like order. Sometimes it looks like the ritual. And sometimes it looks like the rules.
and sometimes those roles hold everything together until they don't.
As you walk away from this story, think about other moments in history where violence followed a script, where belief systems gave it meaning, where rules made it feel necessary and inevitable. Because understanding the past isn't just about what happened. It's about recognizing when a system starts feeding on itself and asking what comes next.
So, what did you think about this?
Oh, this was fascinating.
This was very fascinating. I enjoyed this one. I enjoyed, even though it'll probably fall on the editing room floor, I enjoyed the laughs that we had making this one.
Say,
We weren't laughing about what was happening. We were laughing at each other because that's what we do.
yes. Sometimes if you don't laugh, you'll scream. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you're not.
So, if you'd like to support this podcast, tell a friend and help get the word out.
If you would like to support the show, you can do so at Patreon, or you can simply take advantage of some of our sponsors. Either way it goes, all of those links are in the show notes.
And as always, William and I want to thank you for listening.
If you've been with us from day one or just tuning in, it's a big thank you.
Join the Facebook group at Info on the Go.
Over there, you can just get to know us.
Or ask us a question.
But whatever you're doing, stop and hit that follow button wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Send us some fan mail using the link in the show notes or leave a review.
We really do love that fan mail. But leaving that review, it helps others find us and see a podcast. You can email us directly at
infoonthegopodcast@gmail.com.
And the best thing about it, all of this is in the show notes. Till next time.
Stay curious.
Hey, listen up. All of my workforce friends out there, whether you're ranchers, farmers, or you just need a pair of good leather gloves, look no further than Bare Knuckles. The best leather gloves ever made, featuring a patent design crafted for natural curve of the fingers. These gloves deliver a perfect fit, superior protection, and all-day comfort. Made from premium leather, right now get an exclusive 15% off, and you can find that at buybareknuckles.com, but make sure you use our code INFOGO at checkout. You can find that link in the show notes. Upgrade your hands, and remember, every purchase, well, it supports the show, so thank you.
If you love unforgettable treats, you've got to try Molly B's Gourmet Cookies. These aren't your average cookies. Molly B's brings bold, artisan crafted cookies straight to your pantry. We're talking chocolate, cherry, and amaretto and be cordial. Earl Grey, lavender, white chocolate, and lemon glaze in the tea. Even maple, bacon, whiskey, and white chocolate in the Boss Man. Founded by a single mom from Alaska, Molly Bees has become a national sensation. You get 10% off any product using our code INFOGO at mollybees.com. Find the link in the show notes.